Now the talking point is, oh, whenever you mail in a ballot, there's no security there. How can you verify that person's real? Well, how have y'all been able to do it?
Mm-hmm.
It works when y'all are winning.
Right. That's the key.
Mike Lee stood up and said this, but he won the mail-in ballot vote. And he has always won the mail-in ballot vote. The Republicans up and down the state have won the mail-in ballot vote. In the day of vote as well, too. But because they saw Georgia flip and Arizona flip, because Democrats said, oh, I'm going to vote. I may not go to the poll, but I'm going to vote by mailing in my ballot because we in a pandemic. Now it's an issue.
Right.
And now they're saying that this is what caused Donald Trump to lose the election.
And Donald Trump caused Donald Trump to lose the election.
Right. But guess who voted by mail? Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah. This is Dr. Curry.
This is Kobe Owens.
And welcome to The Source. Many of you may be saying, why is he standing today? I have a pinch of nerves, so I won't be able to sit, but we are certainly going to make sure that you get reliable news for today. Kobe, today we wanted to start off by talking a little bit about the city council meeting when they were with the chief of police, and I just want to get an update on what was going on with that meeting.
Yeah, so this was a special meeting that took place on the 18th of the public safety, where they had the chief of police there to answer any questions. It was supposed to be just a robust conversation about what's going on with the police force, and allow all council members who wanted to attend to be able to ask our questions directly to the chief, not to the inspectors, but directly to the chief, and have him answer it as best as possible. Of course, they sent him questions in advance so that he could actually have time to prepare his answers and everything. But it was some very concerning things that he said, especially with the diversity of the police force when he was talking about it. So as of right now, the Wilmington police force has 177 white officers, and that goes from the chief down to patrol officer.
Now, before you go any further with any data, please make sure for the screen that we have that piece of data there, what he just shared. Go ahead.
And
177?
177. We'll put this all up on the screen. For African American Black, there's 56 officers, with the highest being one captain, going all the way down to 15 patrol officers. And then for Hispanic, it's 19 officers. Again, the highest being lieutenant, going down to patrol officer. And then the rest, the last category is other, and it's 4 people who fall into that category of other. So that's Asian American, multi-race, whatever. That's what that is there. So that's the breakdown of our males. And then on the women's side, there's 20 white officers who are female, 15 black officers, 9 that are Hispanic, and 1 that's other. For a grand total of 301 officers on our police force. That's how it was broken down. Now, in this city is over 50% black.
Yes.
This city has a high population of Hispanics as well too, and our police force does not represent that. So we have to do a better job of making sure we have a reflective police force when it comes to a city like our size.
So the question I guess I would ask is, did anyone ask him, I know he inherited a lot of what he has. has anyone asked him whether or not he is planning or putting a concerted effort into having the police department reflect the community that they serve?
Yeah, it was asked, and this question isn't new. This is something that actually Council President now, former District 2 Councilman Trippy Congo, has been asking for the last 6 years, is what are we doing to increase diversity? The second to last year under the Williams administration, I think, from my viewpoint, was the most diverse class that they ever had. It was about maybe 40% black. They had their first Asian American officer, 3 Latinos in that class, and then the rest was white. It was a very diverse class, and I think they need to bring that strategy back of really reaching in to the HBCUs, going into communities of colors, and engaging at an early age. But what happens is you get all these applications, people go through the process between the background checks, between the written and oral exams, between the physical training. A lot of people get weeded out, and it comes down to maybe a class of less than 30 when they start with an application pool of 100, 150. But they've also seen a decrease in the amount of people who are applying to be officers. It's not a profession they want to go into, and a lot of people cite that originally they wanted to go into it, but officers are being asked to do way too much now.
Yeah, well, if you look at some of the things that they are asked to do, and now that we are beginning to understand, like this whole mental health issue that is going neglected constantly, that is constantly going neglected, we recognize that if they were to bring in and use some of the resources to help with that area, cops that shouldn't have to be the negotiator.
Right.
They should be able to be a part of the community.
Right.
Respond to crime as crime is needed. But whenever we need a person to de-escalate something, or we need a group, we need to start investing in those areas. So I understand why a person would not want to be a part of the police department.
Right. And looking at our criminal investigation division, that was broken down. It has 1 white captain, 1 white lieutenant, 6 white sergeants, and then 6 black detectives, 1 Hispanic detective, and 29 white detectives. So overwhelmingly, it's a very white department. And then also looking at the drug, organized crime, and vice has 1 white captain, 1 white lieutenant, 1 white sergeant, 1 black detective, 2 Hispanic detectives, and 14 white detectives. So again, the ones that are supposed to be on the streets doing an investigation while also getting to know the community so that they can solve these crimes are not reflective of the community. So there's distrust there as well too. Yeah. And this is something we've been talking about for a long time. And I know some people may say, oh, Kobe doesn't like the cops. That's not true. I believe that if you want to get to true community empowered policing, you have to have a reflective police force that can do community policing and can connect with the community so that if there is an issue, if there is an incident, if there is a shooting like we keep seeing here on the streets, people are more likely to talk to people that look like them because they will understand what's going on and they'll have a more trusting feel there. So we have to do a better job with that overall.
Now, when you all were when they were talking with the chief, did they share with him that, or did he share plans that would reflect what you just shared? Because I'm sure that has to be the consensus.
Yeah, I mean, he's talked about it for, how they're trying to go out and recruit, highlight minority officers, have minority officers go back to their communities and try to recruit as well, too. You have, the PAL, which is supposed to give, young kids more direct contact with, in a positive light with the police force. It just has not been working over these last 6 years. So I think, again, not saying anything failed, but we have to relook at how we're, implementing policy.
Now, I had an opportunity to have a very lengthy conversation with the chief, Tracy, on this week. And I was, as I said, when I don't know a person, and they do give me the opportunity to get to know them, I give them the benefit of the doubt. And some of the things that he was sharing with me that he's interested in, it felt and appeared to be like it could be a good plan. The problem and I kind of agreed with him, is that we went right into COVID upon his arrival.
Right.
So he wasn't able to deliver the way he felt he could, as he done in New York, as he did in Chicago. And he assured me that it's going to turn. Not so much COVID, although we believe COVID is going to turn too, but it's going to turn and it's going to be more. So what I would like to do is see, that's why I'm asking the questions, what did he say is he going to be able to? Because at the end of the day, if there is no concerted effort to have this department reflect the community it serves, everything is going to fail.
Yeah, and I agree. And I just want to correct one thing. He came here in 2017, so he had a few years before the pandemic. But the pandemic has definitely hurt. Like it has any profession, to be honest, is struggling right now because of COVID. Right. And dealing with those, officers being out with COVID, officers not wanting to, do the vaccine mandate or something like that. And then just, of course, wear and tear of retirement and stuff like that. But you have had almost 6 years in this position now. I think, you talk about the strategies implemented in Chicago and in New York. But if you actually look at the time when he was there, with some of the highest crime rates. So I don't know necessarily if we should be using that same thinking. And plus, this is a different city. It's a smaller city, which means we're more connected, but also that means things intensify when things get personal, especially with what's going on with all this social media beef that's leading to 113 shootings in the city. 50% of the state shootings happen within, a few mile radius. That's a shame. Right. And we have to do a better job.
Now, one of the things he shared with me is that he does believe in like the community policing, where they come out of the cars unless they have to respond to something, and they are in the community. That's why I say give him a chance. But you countered that with I gave him 2 years. But it's so important that even though in Chicago or in New York they tried it and it did work, but you said some of the crime was still very high. I think some of the things he shared, like community policing and how that worked, we can say the words, but how that worked, what his plan is,
but
it's a good plan.
The plan, if it's implemented the right way, will work. Right? But as the leader of public safety for the city of Wilmington, he cannot do this from behind his desk. Okay. He needs to come out and be on the street. Okay. Just randomly. Don't let his officers know he's coming out there. That's fair. Because the officers are out walking on Market Street and downtown and at the riverfront, but the officers sit in their cars over Vandover Ave or, over, in East Side. They just sit in their cars. They're not walking. They're not, communicating, hey, how are you? Been a good day? They're not doing that. They're sitting in their cars. So if he pops up randomly on them, that's going to make them want to get out their cars more and be, doing what he envisions them to be doing.
Very good. I just wanted to test the system out to see how it's going, and I'm glad to get your perspective, as well as I did have a conversation with him this week, and I'm sure there's going to be much more. I've invited him to be a part of my Coffee with Curry so that he can share with the community. But your comment of we have to be actively engaged from the top through the bottom in order for any change to occur, I certainly support that. Let's turn our attention just for a few minutes to John, our governor, who has really tried to up-pep the whole testing and availability of testing for the state of Delaware. We know that Joe Biden got a big beating this week, and I'm interested in seeing what the governor's doing. But before we do this, we'll be right back. Let me not be back. Just look at this. as I said, the governor's doing everything in his power, I guess, to try to upscale. But what are you thinking?
Yeah, no, I mean, we're still dealing with a spike right now.
Yeah.
Testing sites are overwhelmed. Hospitals are overwhelmed with COVID patients and everything. But they're doing their best to make sure people can get tested, which we're going to see higher numbers. Yeah. The more people that get tested, the higher the cases are going to be, which is a good thing because we know, how to contain it and stuff like that. We have to do a better job holding ourselves accountable as well, too.
Yeah.
Newcastle County just gave out 6,000 take-at-home tests. They're going to do another event. You have one satellite site that pops up all across the city, and then you have one stationary over in the 2nd District that's doing testing. And when I rode past both of them recently, it's almost 2 blocks worth of people standing out there. People who get there on their lunch break stay, 2 hours just to make sure they get tested. So people are scared. I think Governor Carney's doing his absolute best to try to meet the demand that's there. And then on a federal level, they have talked about sending take-at-home tests to individuals right at your home for a while. And it was finally announced Wednesday. Lisa Blunt Rochester, our congresswoman, tweeted out the link to do that. So all you have to do is free. You have to sign up, put your address, put your name, and email address to track it, and they will start sending it out mid-January. So around probably next week,
right.
They will, starting as early as tomorrow, they will be sending out tests to people.
Well, I certainly, as soon as I got that link, I sent it out to our church, and I sent it out to everybody I knew, and people were just putting it in. I just want to see how long it will really take.
Yeah.
So no one can. I'm a researcher. It came out to me. I think it was Tuesday. I did it Tuesday as soon as it came to me, just to see how long it's going to take to get to us, because that's what I would like to report. Yeah, it's working or it's not working. So go ahead.
And everyone gets 4 tests.
4. Yeah.
So if you have 5 people, they really couldn't do anything for you, but each household will get a minimum of 4 tests this first go round, and then they'll see how it works if they're going to do another round of these tests as well too.
Yeah, and I just want to say to those of you who are watching also, you don't have to wait until you're not feeling well, because there are many people who are asymptomatic, and asymptomatic means that you have no symptoms at all, but you do have it. That's one of the things I do. I get a professional test, and I take my take-home test at least once a week. Why? Because I'm around a lot of people. I love my wife and my daughter, and I want to make sure they stay safe. So I make sure I'm taking tests and have them taking tests so that we can stay safe and healthy. And that has worked for me. So far, we've been in this, and I don't want to, as the old folks would say, jinx myself, but we've been in this pandemic for a little bit over 2 years now, and I have not contracted the coronavirus, and I'm around a lot of people. Yeah. But I do take those precautions to make sure that I'm living right, or I shouldn't say living right, but getting my testing done appropriately.
No, and I'm the same way. If I know I'm going to be at a protest or something like that, I get tested before. I quarantine after for a minimum of 72 hours before I go get tested to give it time that if it is in my system, it will show up. Right. And then I get tested usually probably about a week after that first test as well too, just to be on the safe side. Right. But yeah, coming into 2022, we saw a record of positive cases. Yeah. So while we are in year 2 of this, and we're coming up on the anniversary in March of when we went into that first lockdown, and it seems as though everyone was taking it serious back then. I went to the food line and someone was in trash bags taped up and everything. We don't do that anymore. But this is still very serious.
It is. And because although Omicron was not as lethal, it was certainly it was much more
contagious. Yeah. Yes.
Let me also turn our attention just for a moment also to the police violence. I will say, thank God, we have not had any murders for the last week or so, and I'm grateful for that. But some of the families of those individuals who were in the hands of police officers, and they were brutalized, and some died. All of them died, really. There was a article out this week, and I just want you all to see this.
An outside law firm and the state's attorney general are not recommending charges against 3 Newcastle County officers for their role in the shooting death of a man earlier this year. The report by Morgan, Lewis, and Bacchius examined the police shooting death of Lamond Moses on January 13th. The shooting happened after Moses, who was asleep behind the wheel of a rental vehicle in Wilmington, sped away from police, reached a dead end in the road, and then turned his car around and drove towards officers. Moses' family members, along with their attorneys and members of the community, met with the state's attorney general in Wilmington ahead of the release of the report. The report concludes that while criminal charges are not appropriate in this case, it does recommend using the incident to address shortcomings in the police department and in use of force training. Stay with Delaware Online for more on this story as it develops. I'm Damian Chiletto.
Yeah, and so I heard that you were present for that rally there on French Street. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, so again, this was the families of those who have lost loved ones or those who've been seriously injured by loved ones. Breonna Taylor's aunt, Bianca, came. Jacob Blake Sr., the father of Jacob Blake, who was shot 7 times in the back in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And then also the friends and families of George Floyd also came here to join the Moses family to talk about, holding the police accountable, but also changing the system so that this doesn't happen again.
Right.
It's very difficult for families to speak out and say that we're probably never going to get justice or accountability for our family member, but we're going to fight so that no one else ends up like them and ends up in the same situation where they can't get justice and accountability. And one of the things I said when I speak at these type of events is I wish I never had to meet any of them. And I don't say that in a way saying I don't like them.
Right.
I'm saying I wish I could have met them at a cookout. I could have met them, playing games or at a concert or something. Not because of the heartache and the pain that has brought us together. Right. And one of the things about this situation is through that pain, we have seen something beautiful grow. And that's a coalition that is multi-generational, multiracial, men, women, everyone coming together to say that we want justice for Lamont Moses, but we also want to see changes in LEABORD, which is the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights, so that when there are incidents like this, and when we have these international law firms that come in and either say, hey, like, y'all policies need to be changed. Hopefully someone's talking about this, and we've been talking about it for the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And now, we have an international law firm confirming what we've been saying. We have the 21st Century Policing Strategy Group saying what we've been saying. And some of the Delaware elected officials still are saying we need better experts instead of just some random activists saying this.
But the problem is when you hear lawmakers, politicians say that they need better resources or references in order for things to happen is because they don't want to make it happen.
Yeah.
I do say to all of our elected officials, those who know me, they need to do something, and they need to do something real quickly. I saw something, we were with Mouse this week, and I saw something where Delaware is noted as the #1 racist state in this country. We're too small to be noted as the most racist state.
Yeah.
But what we're doing, politicians, those who are elected officials, who have some control over this whole LEABORD legislation or rule or whatever protection plan I call it, is we're permitting the wrong. Dr. King said in order for evil to prevail is for good people to say or do nothing. And I think when we're in a position to be able to change rules and laws and protections, we need to do it because it's about accountability.
Yes.
What I loved about having a conversation with the chief this week is that I was able to share with him, my father was a was a part of the police department for 40 years. He ended up being a superintendent before he left. And I shared with him, he was under Frank Rizzo, which was really, because Frank Rizzo was one of the most racist.
Yeah.
But the people loved him because he ain't take no mess and he had a safe city. So I'm never going to say I'm not. My brother is a part of the police department. I'm never going to say that I'm against cops, but crooked cops, they got to go.
Yeah,
they got to go,
and they make it bad for good cops.
Yes, right, and that's absolutely it. So, but I did take note of one thing before we go to our commercial break. I did take note to While y'all were there at that rally, I saw cops everywhere. What was that all about?
Yeah, no. Whenever black
Yeah,
organizers
yeah.
come together, there was 7 cop cars. There was the Homeland Security came out. The Homeland Security officers came out of the federal building. There were security everywhere. But when we had white supremacists, not only march down Market Street, then go up on 95 in 2020, they got 2 police cars to escort them up there and allow them to march. Nothing else.
Well, maybe they were just trying to protect y'all because y'all can't fight.
Oh, we could fight.
No, but think about
we got the spirit of our ancestors in us.
They didn't need to protect the racist KKK folks because they are fighters, but you all needed some extra protection. I took note to that.
Yeah.
People look at things differently and different things, but when I saw that coverage, I said, what is all these cops doing all over the place?
We're immediately deemed violent. We're deemed, uncontrollable.
Yeah. And
we're deemed angry black people.
You know what really got me? I think he's from Kentucky, the senator who said, or the congressman who said, I wasn't scared. I wasn't scared. Now, had it been Antifa or others, then I would have had some concern.
Yeah,
he said that out loud.
Ron Johnson
Yes,
from Wisconsin.
yes.
I think it was even a week after the January 6th insurrection. Yeah. He said, I felt safe.
Yeah.
If it was Antifa or Black Lives Matter, I would have feared for my life. Forget about the insurrectionists saying they're coming there to hang the vice president and all this other stuff, that they had zip ties, guns, tasers.
Yeah.
They killed officers. He wasn't scared of them because he's with them.
And that's my point.
But if we had darker skin, then he would be scared.
Oh, he would have been scared. Listen, Biden just had a horrible week. I just hope he can rebound. We're going to talk about it when we come back. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Dr. Cindy, and I'm here with Asha. What would be the thing that makes you say, you know what, now's the time?
I've been on the fence for a while about whether to get the vaccine or not, based on, things that I've heard, things that I've seen. Seeing those kind of things just gets you a little scared. It's like, I think everybody should have a choice. Could the vaccine possibly affect my ability to have kids in the future?
Here's the real kicker. If someone got COVID-19, the illness, and they were pregnant, their chance of miscarriage goes up by over 3 times as much.
I didn't think about COVID-19 possibly affecting your reproductive system, because my mom, she was barely able to have kids. It was a miracle that I was able to be here. It was very important for me to know that, and now I am a lot more secure in getting the vaccine than I was.
I'm getting vaccinated against COVID-19. Yes, there could be some short-term side effects from the vaccine, but they go away in a day or 2. Those are signs that my body's building protection. It's worth it to avoid serious problems from COVID-19 disease.
This is our historic moment of crisis and challenge, and unity is the path forward.
As President Biden enters his 2nd year in office, that unity is elusive, with the very same crisis and challenge still burning red hot and complicating his path forward. The optimism from Biden's inaugural address,
bringing America together,
tempered by the bitter reality of a capital and a nation even more divided, and a president scrambling to find his footing. From an unrelenting pandemic to stubborn inflation to dangerous threats to democracy at home and across the globe, the White House is trying to reset and restore a floundering presidency. Tonight, election reform on the cusp of failing in the Senate, the latest example of the limits of presidential power in today's Washington, where Republicans are loath to cooperate and Democrats with a razor-thin majority struggle to compromise.
There's been a lot of progress made. We need to build on that. The work is not done. The job is not done. And we are certainly not conveying it is.
Still, in March, Biden signed a $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan to ease the economic fallout from COVID-19. And months later, a $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure plan.
Bravo.
A landmark accomplishment that has eluded presidents of both parties.
Despite the cynics, Democrats and Republicans can come together and deliver results.
But that bipartisan bridge did not extend to the second part of his economic agenda, the the Build Back Better plan, stalled in the Senate and facing an uphill road in this midterm election year. But above all, top White House officials concede the first year of the Biden presidency has been complicated and consumed by coronavirus. Remarkable gains were made on vaccines, but the president's summertime declaration of success proved utterly premature.
It no longer controls our lives. It no longer paralyzes our nation. And it's within our power to make sure it never does again.
A fall wave of the Delta variant, followed by a winter surge of Omicron, laid bare the failures in COVID testing and eroded confidence once again in the administration's grasp of the crisis.
It's clearly not enough. If we'd known, we would have gone harder, quicker if we could have.
On the world stage, Biden reassured allies after the whiplash of the Trump era.
America is back.
Yet the prospect of a new Cold War is now an urgent fear. That was not apparent during Biden's summit with Vladimir Putin in June, which focused on cyber attacks, a threat overshadowed by Russia's aggression toward Ukraine.
Look ahead in 3 to 6 months and say, did the things we agreed to sit down and try to work out, did it work?
Biden sought to reset the Russian relationship. Now Putin is testing Biden and Western allies. For all the challenges outside any president's control, one of the most devastating periods of Biden's first year was a decision that he made and stands behind.
I was not going to extend this forever war. And I was not extending a forever exit.
The swift fall of the Afghanistan government and the chaotic evacuation that followed, including 13 Americans killed in a suicide bombing, raised critical questions about competence that Biden and his team still struggle to shake 6 months later.
I take responsibility for the decision.
Yet taking responsibility marks a noted change between Biden and his predecessor, who looms even larger 1 year out of office. That point was clear on the anniversary of the Capitol attack.
He's not just a former president. He's a defeated former president.
And that, advisors say, is a glimpse into Biden's current mindset. He's no longer ignoring Trump and his assault on democracy. The outcome of his second year will help shape how Biden answers the biggest question of all, likely by this time next year. Will he run again?
We also have helped make sure that high-quality masks are widely available in ample supply at affordable prices, sold online and in stores. But I know that for some Americans, the mask is not always affordable or convenient to get. So, next week we'll announce how we are making high-quality masks available to the American people for free. I know we all wish that we could finally be done with wearing masks. I get it. But they're a really important tool to stop the spread, especially of a highly transmittable Omicron variant. So please wear the mask.
And we're back. You know, normally we go right into our Kobe Corner because that's my favorite part of the show. But I want to, before we go there, I want to talk a little bit about Biden's administration giving out 400 million N95 masks, and I thought that was wonderful. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so the president has announced that they're going to be pulling from our stockpile, and it's over half, right? We have 750 million non-surgical N95 masks in our stockpile. He's pulling 400 million of these to send out to Americans. People should be eligible to get about 3 per person. Again, this is, continuing to push to make sure people are masked up. I've gone through maybe about 12 different masks at this point through the pandemic, just wear and tear, the loops start to tear or something like that. So making sure people still have access to that and still be able to have the best protection possible when we're fighting this very contagious variant of COVID-19.
Yeah, and how do you get those masks?
Yeah, so it's going to be very similar to the take-at-home test. You're going to be able to apply for it online. The only difference is it's based on individuals, not households. So the take-at-home tests were based on households. Individuals would have to go and sign up. You need your own unique name and email.
Okay. Well, my daughter doesn't have an email. Well, she does now. Okay, I was going to say, if my daughter don't have an email, how are we going to have one for her? But I'm sure they'll work it out. I just know that Biden has had a very, very bad week, and just so many things hitting him at one time. Even some slip-ups he did. But one of the things I was very grateful for is that they asked him directly, and that was the only question he answered directly, well, whether or not Kamala Harris would be his running mate if he was to run. When he said yes and yes, and she's doing a good job, yes. And people will try to view her not being able to deliver the Voters' Right Act as a failure. Mm-hmm. But she cannot make a Joe Manchin do anything.
And I just want to be clear about one thing. Kamala Harris did not make the promise that she was going to deliver voting rights, that she was going to deliver policing reform. Joe Biden made that.
And signed it to her.
We elected Kamala Harris as our vice president. We elected Joe Biden as our president.
Okay.
So Joe Biden needs to put his foot down and let them know, hey, I'm in charge of the party now. This is my agenda, fall in line. President Obama was able to do it, Clinton was able to do it, Carter, kind of. Biden needs to really put his foot down if he wants to get this done. And the vice president, because she recently served in the U.S. Senate, she has those relationships that she can lean on. But he also has his relationships from his 36 years in the Senate. And unfortunately, it's a lot of those same senators there from when he was in the Senate as well, too.
Yeah, but I don't think they have a respect for him because Joe Manchin really showed, I thought that behind the scenes they were working it out, but he has no respect for Biden.
No, he doesn't care. And he even said, oh, I'm probably going to get primary, but I've always been primary, so that doesn't matter to me.
And he probably will always win.
Right.
Yeah.
Him and Sinema, they said, well, here's the thing. If you're all mad at me, I'm just going to keep fundraising. There's someone out there that I'm making happy, and they're willing to give me money.
And they're doing it.
And they're doing it.
Yeah.
They're doing it. The end of the year reports will be out Wednesday, and I'm going to be reading through them all, seeing who, how much PAC money they're getting, how much individual money, and seeing who those individuals are that are maxing out to these people.
One last thing before we go to your corner, Kobe. You said that you believe that you and Jay Street shared that y'all believe that the Senate, not the Senate, but the House would go Republican. Is that because of tradition, or the numbers is really looking that way?
So it's tradition, it's the redistricting. You saw a lot of competitive seats become more Republican. Some of the toss-up Dem seats that are held have gone a little more to the Republican side, and it'll be harder for them to win those seats. And then President Biden doesn't have the best approval rating. And people are, disappointed. Young Americans are saying, what is he doing for me? He promised, to cancel student loans, and, we're going to have to start paying again very soon. He promised to deliver on voting rights in certain states. We still have issues in Georgia and Texas. Under his administration, under the trifecta, unfortunately, you've seen state governments have the most impactful Jim Crow era laws implemented. Voting rights, women reproductive rights, and, all the education, where they're literally restricting black authors from having books in schools. So this is all happening under President Biden and a Democratic Senate and House. This isn't them passing this. This is local governments, but this is also how people will view it.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the Kobe Corner. I'm excited about what you have for us today.
So, January 20th has come and passed, and that's the 1-year anniversary of the historic swearing in of President Biden from Delaware, Senator Harris to Vice President Harris from California, and the first black woman, and first black American to serve as a vice president for us. And then later in that day, they swore in Alice Padilla from California to replace Senator Harris, and Senator Ossoff and Warnock into the Senate to officially flip the Senate and make it 50-50, right? And in that year, we saw some accomplishments, But what we saw was Biden's agenda really get knocked off track. You look at his big spending bill that was supposed to be really lifting people out of poverty, helping the poor. You look at things like the child tax credit, which became critical those last 6 months when it passed the American Rescue Act, and they were looking to expand that in this spending bill, the Build Back Better spending bill. But Joe Manchin said no. Joe Manchin actually took direct issue with the child tax credit, even though over 75% of the people in his state who have children would be benefiting from that. He said no, we can't have that much spending. If you look at it, President Biden, what he campaigned on and what he's been able to deliver on are two completely different things.
Right.
He's over-delivered in what he promised was the military budget. He over-delivered by billions there, but under-delivered by over $700 billion for what he said was going to be social and help the poor.
Right.
So, you look at things and the strategy he went into his first year, and he even admitted he has to change some things up from, not really trying to really come out strong with this testing and the mask and say, we're back, we're good, we can take the mask off, to have it to say, look, we have to put the mask back on, we have to have a vaccine mandate. He said he didn't want to go into a shutdown. It keeps looking like we're going to have to go into a shutdown if we don't get over this hump right now, if we don't get over this spike soon. You look at his climate bill, which he, invests more into renewable energy, invests more into electric vehicles. That failed, and he opened up more coal and offshore drilling sites than prior, right? So, this it's backfiring in all lights. And then earlier this week, on Wednesday night, the Senate made a move to end the filibuster. And reform the filibuster, not end it, to a talking filibuster, so that they could pass voting rights legislation and other critical democracy-based issues. You had 48 Democrats, including both our senators, Senator Coons and Senator Carper, vote to reform it to a talking filibuster. You had 2 Democrats join the Republicans, all 50 of them, and voting no. So therefore it failed. Those 2 Democrats was Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema. If you look at the report, if you look it up and everything, you'll see it's a 3rd Democrat. But I'm not counting him because he did that for procedural reasons, and that was Chuck Schumer. Now he did that, and I just want to explain it to everyone. He voted yes. Then he changed his vote to no, because any bill that is defeated has to be brought back to the floor by the winning side. So the winning side was the noes, which means that as majority leader, he switched his vote to no so that he can bring this bill back to the floor. We don't count that as a true no.
Okay.
That's only a procedural
that's
rule.
Good information. Okay.
And I know people get confused about that, be like, oh, why'd Chuck Schumer do that? That is a procedural rule. He originally voted yes. If Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema had voted yes originally, the vice president was on standby to come break the vote, and it would have passed. He would not have changed his vote.
Absolutely.
So that's where we're at with that. And when you look at that, that failure there, that's a huge, huge slap in the face to President Biden, who just was with the King family down in Atlanta and gave this great speech calling them out. And they said, ha, 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 forget you. Activists, faith leaders have been calling for voting rights to be restored in states like Georgia and Texas. And it would either positively impact Delaware, because Delaware still has archaic voting laws in our Delaware Constitution that still says we have to have a valid excuse to vote absentee. We were able to do that during the pandemic because we were in a pandemic.
Right.
But if you don't have a medical signed excuse, you can't vote absentee in Delaware.
Wow.
So that is what we're dealing with. And, early voting and stuff like that. Delaware just got early voting. In other states, they haven't had it.
Right.
And people say, senators from Utah got up and said, Democrats are trying to steal this election by doing mail-in ballots, by sending ballots out. Utah is a ruby red state, super conservative, a lot of Mormon out there. Mike Lee is the senior senator, Mitt Romney is the junior senator. It has gone Republican for the last, I think, 10 presidential elections. They have been doing mail-in ballots for over 30, 40 years. But yet, now the talking point is, whenever you mail in a ballot, there's no security there. How can you verify that person's real? Well, how have y'all been able to do it?
Mm-hmm.
It works when y'all are winning.
Right. That's the key.
Mike Lee stood up and said this, but he won the mail-in ballot vote. And he has always won the mail-in ballot vote. The Republicans up and down the state have won the mail-in ballot vote. In the day of vote as well, too. But because they saw Georgia flip and Arizona flip, because Democrats said, I'm going to vote. I may not go to the poll, but I'm going to vote by mailing in my ballot because we in a pandemic. Now it's an issue.
Right.
And now they're saying that this is what caused Donald Trump to lose the election.
And Donald Trump caused Donald Trump to lose the election.
Right. But guess who voted by mail? Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah, and as always. Yeah.
And as always, him and his kids.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But, when minorities do it, it's wrong. Yeah. You look at the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. Mm-hmm. You had the House pass it under the Trump administration, and you had the Senate, led by Mitch McConnell and Tim Scott's negotiations. They didn't want to really do anything. It was more of just suggestions, right? Mm-hmm. Like push in the right direction, but really no accountability. They were all on board for that. But now Democrats are in charge. Now the Democrats can't get their pass because Tim Scott's not on board with it and says it goes and does way too much. So, now the president is openly talking about, all right, for a year now, I tried to get this stuff done. It may have to get done by executive order. Mm-hmm. So now he's talking to his general counsel on how he could potentially get it done. Mm-hmm. So we're going to see what he decides when it comes to voting rights and policing reform and what his general counsel tells him he can do and how far he can go. Mm-hmm. But in the same light of policing reform, as I wrap up here, I'm going to talk about here in Delaware.
Okay.
HB 255. Mm-hmm. And what that is a bill that was introduced by Representative Kendra Johnson, Representative Sherry Dorsey Walker, and Senator Tizzy Lockman.
Okay.
And it was introduced last year, and it's, finally out of committee, to hopefully to be heard on the House floor soon. And there's federal civil rights violations under the U.S. Code, Chapter 18 of the U.S. Code, Section 242, that makes it a crime whenever someone under the color or authority of the state law willfully subjects any person in any state to deprivation of any rights protected by the Constitution or the laws of the United States of America. This would apply to what happened with George Floyd, and that officer using his powers to deprive George Floyd of his civil rights. If death or violent results, which would equal a more severe punishment. So this, again, we've been talking about policing reform for a long time. Here in Delaware, it would establish it as a new crime called deprivation of civil rights, which would be a Class A misdemeanor, which would be elevated to a Class D or a Class B felony, depending on the nature of the injury or the harm. This new deprivation of civil rights is, again, on the same level of hate crimes and racketeering and committed by enterprise. But this bill also includes conduct committed under color of any ordinance, regulation, or custom, so it would apply to the conduct by the actors in the areas such as banking, lending, leasing, government contracts, and political operatives.
All right.
So this is going to be a hot topic bill that's going to be highly contested, but I think it's much needed. And again, those sponsors of that bill are, the prime sponsor is the Black Caucus Chair, Kendra Johnson from the 5th District, the Bear area.
My area.
Your area. Former councilwoman from the West Side, who's State Rep Sherry Dorsey Walker from the 3rd District. And then on the Senate side, the prime sponsor from the West Side as well is Senator Tizzy Lockman from the 3rd District. So this is the Black Caucus coming together to push another bill to protect minorities, but protect everyone's civil rights here in Delaware.
And do you think it will pass?
I think it will have some issues on the floor. I don't think they're ready to put it up. I don't think they have the votes yet in the House. They have the votes in the Senate. But that's why they wanted to go with the House side first to try, put all the effort in over there. So it's maybe a 60% chance of passing right now as they try to get more support for it.
Okay. Well, we're going to be looking for that. Is there anything else on your corner, Kobe?
No, that is all I have.
Well, Kobe, we certainly have had a whole lot of things we discussed today. And one thing I do want to bring before we go to our final thoughts of the day is that the Supreme Court did something that I was very happy about, and it helped to preserve their status and their look. I was of the opinion that they were going to let Trump off, where Trump would not have to or let the archive, give his records and speeches and things of that nature. But when they came out, and only Clarence Thomas, and I think Clarence Thomas has a hate for liberals because of what was happening during his time of being confirmed. But it was almost a unanimous decision. No, you do not have any right. I thought that was just superb. And what are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree with you. I think, one, they saw what happened that day and why it may be a different branch of government. I could tell you right now, they all feel the same way about what happened on January 6th.
Okay.
And that Trump overstepped his power and he went too far. Now, it's a lot of things they let slide. A lot of things a lot of people let slide in their party. But to have 3 confirmed judges that were nominated by Trump all say, yeah, nah, bruh, you went too far with this. We're going to allow this because we need to get to the bottom of it. Right. So I think it's a good step. Unfortunately, Clarence Thomas was the dissenting voice, but I'm not shocked by that. But, I think hopefully this will open up even more information into truly what led to the events that happened on January 6th.
Well, I believe it will. And let me just make sure for clarity for those who are watching us, if the House flips, we know they're going to shut everything down.
Yes.
But I'm sure that the people who are working on this report understand that.
Yep.
But they have until January to get the report out, right? Not November.
Yes.
Now, we'll know the House flipped or didn't flip by November, but they still can work on it until January before the power is given to the...
January 3rd,
okay.
2023 is when the new Congress will be sworn.
Okay, so they still have time, and there's some smart people.
Yeah.
Some of the things I've been watching and seeing reveal, and now they're going on after Giuliani, and then in New York. I mean, how does Trump keep up with all these lawsuits? Sometimes I just wished I was a lawyer and worked on his team because he has everybody rich.
Yeah. Well, when you're a billionaire, you have a lot of money to blow.
Well, there's an argument on whether or not he's a billionaire, but he might be. Okay, I'll let him be who he is. But I'm just shocked that he was able to finesse his way out of so much, and now you got so many people coming at his organization, coming at him, and he's still able to stand like ain't none of this bothering me. Like Tony Montana on Scarface. I don't know if you old enough to know about Scarface.
Yes. I do. But yeah, no, he sees this as a joke, and that this is just building his profile to run again. Yeah. So he thinks it's all one big joke. So it's sad.
Well, I want to say to those of you that are watching, we thank you so very much for watching us today. Today we did not put anything in our source to talk about the Senator Darius Brown case, because right now things are under conversation, it's under being talked about with the legislators. What we wanted to do is to make sure that we're going to report out. Both sides have had their opportunity to talk to the state senators who will be handling this probe. So we decided that we're going to wait and we're going to watch, just like we waited and watched when we went through the hearing through the state. And when that decision comes out, we're certainly going to cover it, and we're going to cover it very strongly. I ask that you would please, talking to every senator who may be watching us from the state of Delaware, especially those who are doing the probe. Should I just go there? I think it's Tizzy, I think Senator.
The Ethics Committee.
Yeah, the Ethics Committee, that you do not prolong this. Because, see, we don't want your committee to be viewed as somebody making a way for somebody else to run against Darius or run. We keep it clean. If there's some information that needs to get out to the public, put it out in the public so that we can discuss and debate it, but then make a decision so that we can also discuss and debate it. But do not wait until the 9th hour so that you can give somebody an edge on a seat. That's important to all of us, and we will be watching. I thank you for the time that I've had the opportunity to share with you today. Brother Kobe, anything else you want to share?
No, again, please make sure you go very sure to get your take-at-home test. Make sure you're doing those. Be safe, have fun. But again, remember, we are still in a pandemic.
Yes, and sorry for standing with y'all today, but I am in true pain. But we were able to get through it because I enjoy bringing you the source. Until the next time, this is Dr. Curry.
This is Kobe Owens.
See ya.
Take care, y'all.